What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Bumpy Road to $10 million. We're now well into 2026. We've constructed our portfolio for the year, and as we discussed in the January portfolio update, our portfolio increased in value by around 3% in the first month. Now it has come down since then, but we're only going to cover performance at the end of each month. There's just too much noise if we look at our portfolio value more frequently than that. So today we're going to discuss what I would do and have done in situations where there are large changes in the S&P 500 value, up or down. And we'll call these rules for staying alive. Before moving on, a reminder that this video is not financial advice, and when investing, you can lose everything. So please always do your own research. So guys, in an ideal world, the S&P 500 would just increase in value each year by 10% or more, which would get us to our annual target portfolio return of just under 30%. But we know from history this is almost impossible. There will be years, and it could be this year, that the S&P 500 crashes by 20 or 30% early on in the year. There could also be years where, for example, the S&P 500 increases by 20% early on in the year. What I'm getting at is there are an infinite number of paths that the stock market can take during a calendar year, and we can never be sure what this path will be. But what we definitely want to do is ensure we take advantage of large market movements, up or down, either to maximize our returns or to maximize our sleep at night, which in my opinion is more important than the returns. So through the last 5 years of investing in this strategy, I've developed certain rules of thumb that I follow, which we'll discuss today. There is no scientific reason behind these rules. These are just what have worked for me. Now, there are rules for what to do when the market rises quickly and for what to do when the market crashes. Today, we'll talk about rules for what to do in a rising market, as this is the more common scenario each year. Remember, one of our assumptions is that the S&P 500 increases by 9.5% per year moving forward, and in the last 50 years, this has happened 70% of the time. Let's start with rule number 1. Take off leverage when the S&P 500 or SPY is up 12.5% for the year. Taking off leverage for our portfolio essentially means that once the stock market has gone up by 12.5%, we do not want to earn 3 times the daily SPY return anymore. Just the SPY return will do. To do this, we will need to sell UPRO and SPXL and buy the SPY ETF instead. This is clearly a good problem to have, and it really is as simple as it sounds. Now, the reason I follow this rule is that when the SPY is up 12.5% for the year, we will have exceeded our 9.5% annual return assumption by a significant amount. And it's time to take the risk off so we can sleep better at night for the rest of the year. Remember, a 12.5% return for the SPY would mean that UPRO and SPXL are up between 35 to 40%, which is a phenomenal return by any standard. So how would this rule work practically? Well, I applied this rule in both 2024 and 2025. So just a few months ago in September, for example, the SPY was up 12.5% for the year, and I decided to take off the leverage. So in September, happy with my returns for the year, I sold my UPRO and SPXL shares and reinvested the proceeds to buy SPY ETF shares instead. Now, the S&P 500 did increase by about another 4% through the rest of the year, but I honestly didn't care. I had already made a stellar return for the year, and there could have certainly been a scenario where the stock market would have declined instead, killing my gains for the year. I was more than happy to make almost 40% through September and an additional 4% through December by holding the SPY only. What about the put options? Well, if the SPY is up by 12.5% for the year, this means that our options would have declined in value significantly so that they are less than 1% of our portfolio value and rather immaterial from a dollar perspective. So rather than sell my put options, I just keep holding them as insurance until the end of the year so they can help me realize some gains in the event of a market crash. This is point 4 on this slide. So to summarize, guys, this rule is all about downside protection in a good year and not about maximizing returns. And because imagine an alternative scenario where UPRO and SPXL are up by almost 40% for the year, but then there's a stock market crash, and instead of being up 40%, our portfolio is down 60% for the year. While we can certainly recover from this in the long run, going through this experience would psychologically be very difficult. And I can tell you, no matter how tough you are, going through this will negatively impact your quality of life at the time. So while we are obviously aiming to maximize returns through this strategy overall, we should minimize risk and maximize sleep where we can. Another point. If you've been following from the beginning, you will know that one of our 5 assumptions for this strategy is we live in a world with no taxes. And I have to make this assumption because at the moment, this is my personal situation. Of course, if you live in the US or UK, and frankly most places in the world, and you bought and sold securities throughout the year, you would be on the hook for capital gains taxes. So if you want me to make a video on how to apply the rule we just discussed, while potentially minimizing taxes, just let me know in the comments below. So that's it for today, guys. We went through our first rule of thumb for the strategy, specifically what to do in a situation where the SPY has increased in value by 12.5% for the year. The next video will be our February portfolio update, and if we have time, we'll discuss rules for what to do with our portfolio if the market is crashing. I hope today's video was interesting. Please don't forget to like and subscribe below. As always, thank you for your time, and I look forward to seeing you on the next one.